The night I married Daniel Voss, I was already planning how to ruin him. He was standing at the altar with tears in his eyes, the city's most admired man. The papers called him a visionary, a philanthropist, a builder of futures. They didn't know what he'd built on: 14 women, 3 states, 1 buried truth. And Claire Ashford, the woman walking toward him in white silk, was the only person alive who knew every single detail. She had spent 4 years learning his secrets. She spent the wedding night memorizing his tells. And she had one goal disguised as a vow: to have and to hold until the truth sets us free. This is the story of Claire Ashford, forensic accountant, daughter of a ruined man, and the most patient predator in a city full of wolves. 3 years ago, her father, Robert Ashford, lost everything: his business, his reputation, his will to live. He died quietly in a hospital in Ohio, believing the collapse was his fault. It wasn't. Daniel Voss had orchestrated it, a calculated land deal manipulation that bankrupted 14 small investors. He covered his tracks so perfectly that the SEC investigation closed without charges. But Claire had her father's files, all of them. So she did what Daniel Voss would never expect. She made herself indispensable to him. Then she made herself irresistible. And when he proposed on a rooftop at golden hour with a ring that cost more than her father's house, she said yes. Because the best place to destroy a man is from inside his empire. Before Daniel, Claire was invisible, and she had engineered it that way. She worked mid-level forensic accounting at a firm Daniel's company used for audits. She was good enough to be useful, careful enough to be unremarkable. She had studied Daniel Voss for 8 months before she let him notice her. It happened at an office fundraiser, the kind of charity event where powerful men perform generosity. Daniel was working the room. Claire was standing near the windows alone, looking out at the skyline with an expression that said she'd rather be anywhere else. He came to her. Of course he did. Men like Daniel Voss cannot resist a woman who appears unimpressed. "You look like you're solving something," he said. "I'm always solving something," she replied. And she didn't turn around immediately. That was the moment. She had calculated it to the second. Over the next 6 months, Claire let Daniel pursue her at precisely the speed she dictated. When he pushed forward, she stepped back. When he grew cold, she offered the smallest warmth. She understood his psychology completely. A man who had always gotten what he wanted needed to believe, desperately, that she was the exception. She gave him enough to be addicted, not enough to be satisfied. And all the while, she was building her case, document by document, transfer by transfer. She had access to his financial records through her firm. Every anomaly was noted, every shell company traced, every ghost investor named. By the time he proposed, she had enough to send him to federal prison. She just needed one more thing: his confession on record, in a moment when he believed himself untouchable. The wedding would be the beginning of the end. 3 months into the marriage, something happened that Claire had not planned for. She met Claire Voss. Daniel's first wife had been silent for a decade, quietly paid, quietly relocated to a brownstone in Philadelphia. Daniel never spoke of her. The divorce settlement included an NDA so comprehensive that Claire couldn't so much as admit she'd been married. But Claire found Claire. A handwritten note, slipped under the door of Claire's private office at the firm. No name, 1 line. The note reads, "I know what you're doing, and I have what you're missing." They met the next morning at a small cafe neither of them had ever been to before. Claire was already there when Claire arrived. She didn't stand. didn't extend a hand. She simply gestured to the seat opposite and slid a manila envelope across the marble table. Inside, a USB drive and a handwritten account notarized of everything Daniel had done during their marriage. The manipulation, the coercion, a woman in Denver who had disappeared. A payment Daniel made in 2009 that a leaner had traced painstakingly over a decade to a private corrections officer in Colorado. "I couldn't act," a leaner said, not looking up from her coffee. "The NDA, the money, I had children to protect. You don't." "Why me?" Claire asked. "Because you married him with dead eyes. I recognize that look." "I wore it myself." She finally met Claire's gaze. "Finish it." Marcus Webb entered Claire's life the way all dangerous things do, quietly. He had been hired by one of Daniel's investors, a man growing suspicious about missing funds, to conduct a private investigation. He and Claire first collided in a parking structure outside Daniel's headquarters, where she had been photographing financial documents and he had been photographing her. "You're his wife," Marcus said, not a question. "You're following the wrong person," she replied. He smiled slowly. "I don't think I am." They shouldn't have trusted each other. They had every reason not to. But Marcus had something Claire lacked: access to Daniel's personal communications network, a source inside Daniel's inner circle. And Claire had something Marcus needed: the financial forensics to make everything airtight. The problem was that working with Marcus required Claire to let someone see her, truly see her, for the first time in 4 years. And something about that terrified her more than Daniel ever had. Daniel knew, not everything, but enough. He came home one evening and set Claire's digital recorder on the kitchen counter between them, the one she kept hidden in the lining of her jewelry box. He didn't speak, he just watched her face. This was the moment she had feared, not because her plan was destroyed, but because she saw, for the first time, who Daniel truly was without the performance. No charm, no warmth, just a man who had survived by eliminating threats. "I want to know why," he said, quiet. That particular quiet that rooms go before storms. And Claire made a choice. She didn't run, she didn't deny. She told him about her father, not as a gambit, not as strategy. For the first time in 4 years, she told the truth and watched it land on Daniel Voss like something he hadn't accounted for. His expression shifted. And that shift told Claire something that changed everything. He hadn't known Robert Ashford had a daughter. Daniel Voss had, for the first time in 20 years, made a mistake. He had told Claire the truth, not all of it, not willingly. But in the 3 hours that followed their kitchen confrontation, 3 hours in which she did not call Marcus, did not reach for the exit, but sat across from the man she had married and simply listened, Daniel Voss told her more than he had told anyone, not out of love, out of something more dangerous, recognition. "Your father was collateral," he said. She could hear that he almost meant it as an apology. "It wasn't personal." "It was the most personal thing that ever happened to me," she replied. The silence after that was long. Then Daniel reached into his jacket and placed a second USB drive on the table. "There are 12 others," he said. "Things that can't be traced back through the audit trail. If this goes where you're pointing it, it will take down people far more protected than I am." He was giving her a choice: take him down and unleash something larger, or walk away with what she had. Claire looked at the drive for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called Marcus. The federal investigation that followed took 11 months. Daniel Voss was indicted on 14 counts. 3 co-conspirators, including a sitting city councilman, fell with him. The Denver woman was found alive in witness protection. Claire Voss broke her NDA in open court and testified for 6 hours. Claire Ashford Voss filed for divorce on the same day the indictment dropped. The papers cited irreconcilable differences. She received nothing from the marriage. She had signed a prenuptial agreement that stripped her of all marital assets in the event of divorce. Daniel's lawyers had called it airtight. It was. She had read it that way on purpose. She never wanted his money. On the day Daniel Voss was sentenced, 19 years, federal Claire drove to Ohio, to a small cemetery outside Columbus. She sat in the winter grass beside a modest headstone and placed a single white flower against it. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She had done the thing she came to do. It had cost her 4 years, 1 marriage, and the version of herself that still believed love was possible. 3 months later, Marcus Webb knocked on the door of a small apartment in a city she had chosen precisely because no one there knew her name. She opened the door. He was holding coffee. The kind she liked, she had mentioned it once 8 months ago in passing. She stepped back to let him in. Claire spent 4 years pretending to love a man she was destroying, and in the end, the only person she couldn't protect herself from was the one who brought her coffee. So tell me, was what Claire did justice? Or did revenge just wear a wedding ring?